Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Broadband Deployment News. The FCC has released version 3 of the National Broadband Map, and there's some significant changes as far as number of locations and that are on the map, as well as number of unserved locations. Be right back. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Zecorum for Broadband Deployment News. So the FCC, as was expected, has released version 3 of the National Broadband Map. This is something that happens, it's going to happen regularly every 6 months. It's just something that's going to be an ongoing effort. And certainly the map has gotten better since the first version. So this was, the first version came out as part of the Broadband Data Collection Act, where we were required basically to move from a map that was just based on census blocks to one that is based on the actual locations, every single location of a broadband, which should be a broadband serviceable location in the United States. So every single structure in the US that's supposed to have broadband service is now supposed to be on the map, and they're much closer now as far as where those locations are, what those locations are supposed to be. And then at each broadband serviceable location, does it have service? Who is the service provider? If it does have service, it could be more than one. What's their maximum advertised speed? So those are the kinds of things. What type of service? Is it fiber? Is it wireless? That kind of thing. So third iteration of that out. And I just wanted to go through this very quickly on, this is the notice up on the FCC website from Chairwoman Rosen Worcel. A little play on Thanksgiving there. They're thankful for continued improvements on the map. So first off, some notable highlights here that she mentions. The number of unserved homes and businesses is going down. So over 7.2 million locations lack access to high-speed internet. That's down from 8.3 million in the prior map, which came out in May. And that map was based on December data. So the way this works is, so the prior map was based on data from December 31st of 2022. And then right after that, the internet service providers, that's because the internet service providers right after that date start inputting their locations where they serve based on locations that they were serving as of that date. So as of the end of December last year. Then the next filing, that map came out, and let's see, that data was due March 1st. And then the map came out shortly after that. And then this last map that came out, that is of data as of June 30th. So the internet service providers were putting in all of their broadband service locations after that point as to what was effective June 30th. That's kind of confusing. So they were out there inputting data after June 30th as to what locations they covered. So this new map has data as of June 30th. The next go around of this will be the same. So at the end of this year, December 31st, basically, or really starting early next year, like in January, then internet service providers will start putting in their coverage data again as of December 31st of this year. So that'll be the next map that comes out, and that will be due March 1st of next year, and then the map will come out a couple months after that. So that's kind of how this process is going. So you see here again that that's basically 1.1 million fewer locations on this map than there were on the map that was effective May 30th, which again was based on data from December 31st of last year, if that makes sense. So that's pretty good. So if you think about 1.1 million locations and figure that would have cost, I don't know, let's say $4,000 per location. So you're looking at, $3.3 to $4.4 million that is not going to have to be spent from BEAD money, or using BEAD money. I don't know. This may have already been known as committed, so maybe it's, maybe it was already the case. But anyway, it's good to look at it that way, that we've reduced the number of locations that we have to build using BEAD funding. So it says, what else do we have here? So we got broadband build-outs are happening for the deployments funded by the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the BEAD program. So basically, the point she's making is just like I said, 1.1 million locations. This is already happening, and this is prior to any BEAD funding. Mentions here challenges, verifications, and audits are all making the map better. The results of 4.8 million challenges to provider reported availability information and over 1.5 million accepted location challenges. So that's pretty significant. Now, it doesn't say whether this is since May. I'd be surprised if it's since May, if there were that many accepted location challenges. I thought we had the locations pretty well set prior to this. It's possible, though, that there were that many. So you see here again, 4.8 million challenges were, and 1.5 million of these location challenges were accepted. Now, location challenges would be where where somewhere is on the map, and it could also be they could also be talking about just locations that were not on the map. And if that's the case, those changes will continue to happen. Although the BEAD funding that was allocated is all based on the prior map. So if there was a location that was added, or lots of locations added for a state on this last map, that doesn't mean that the state can use BEAD funding to serve those locations, unfortunately, because the money that they got, I guess they could, I suppose, but the money that they got was based on the location data back from December of last year. That was so that we could get a stake in the ground and try to get those funds determined, who gets what and how much. So that's the case there with challenges and audits. And again, hundreds of corrections to provider reported data based on FCC initiated verification efforts. So that would be, where somebody's challenging that a provider doesn't have service there, or maybe the type of service they have there is not what it said. So maybe they say have fiber and it's DSL. I don't know if that's including speed challenges. It may be. Hundreds of corrections, let's say 100 corrections to provider reported data based on FCC initiated verification efforts. So it could be that the FCC looked and said, you know what, according to speed data, it looks like people here are not able to get the 1 gig advertised. And it could be something like that where they're looking at that. And you got fluctuations in our location data are getting smaller. The number of broadband serviceable locations on the current map is up to 115 million, an increase of 800,000. So that's pretty interesting. So they did add 800,000 serviceable locations. Now, again, these are not going to impact the funds that states get, unfortunately, but they were able to make these changes on this most current map, and it does say since May 2023. So these were added. So we've seen a reduction in unserved locations, and we've seen an increase in locations, actual locations. So it's very possible that these locations that were added actually already had service. So it's not like this was 800,000 locations that were unserved or underserved. It could be that a broadband provider, didn't get their information in, and it wasn't known that there were locations there. So it's very possible that a good number of these locations were already served, but they're added back to the map. So again, a big change there. Then she talks about stakeholder engagement here, continues to yield results. Providers are continuing to refine their data matching and reporting. So that's part of the broadband data collection process that I was talking about. So that's where the broadband providers are taking what's called the fabric. The fabric is the data set that they get twice a year that says, here's all the broadband serviceable locations. And every year they need to upload a complete new file that says, okay, here are all the locations we serve. Here's the maximum advertised speed, because that could change, right? They could have increased speeds. Is our latency less than 100 milliseconds round trip? That kind of information. What is our technology? Maybe they upgraded from DSL to fiber in certain areas. So they're going to be uploading this twice a year to that process through that broadband data collection process. And so they take the fabric, they upload their data, and then that produces this broadband map that we're talking about today. So they're continuing to refine their data matching and reporting. And that's good, because it was really bad the first go around. A lot of service providers, it's just one more thing. It's like, oh, here's something we need to do at some point, and they just didn't get around to it, some of them. And then as it got like a month away, they realized, oh my gosh, we got to do this. This is a requirement. Some of them weren't doing it correctly. They thought it was supposed to be where they actually had customers, and not necessarily where they could provide service with a standard installation. So some people only reported where they actually had customers and didn't report every single location where they could serve. So a lot of that's been worked out. As service providers now are going to have to go through this every 6 months, and this is their third time around, plus whatever practice sessions they had prior to that. So that's got a lot better as far as refining, again, the data matching and reporting. Challengers are sharpening their evidence. So again, that's just through feedback. As people challenge things, they get feedback that they realize, or they find out they need to provide additional information. So that's gotten better. And stakeholders are sharing crowdsourced submissions that help us identify service provider data that may warrant heightened review. So that would be the kind of thing where, again, there's something on the map that says a provider is, maybe it's a me just say it's a provider that's got DSL service. I'm just going to pick on DSL because everybody realizes DSL is old technology. So they've got DSL service, and maybe that provider offers fiber in some areas, but they've got DSL in others. In those areas where they have DSL, maybe they're saying they're 25 by 3. They're offering that because that is the minimum definition of broadband to make something at least over unserved. It's still underserved, but let's say it's considered served because it's not served, I guess. It's underserved. In that case, it's very, very possible that as people do speed tests in those areas, that they're not getting 25 by 3. Because DSL is very sensitive to distances from the DSLAM to the modem, basically at the customer's home, the DSL device at the customer's home. And the further you get away, the harder it is to get those speeds. So it's very possible that there could be 1 or 2 folks that are getting that 25 by 3 in certain areas, but as you get further away from that central office or that DSLAM, that those speeds go down. So that's the kind of situation maybe where the FCC would get a report from a community, or others that are challenging that says, hey, you need to look into this. This doesn't sound right. So they talk about the fact that they had hundreds of those, for example. And that's the kind of situation I think they're talking about there. So they would, again, identify service provider data that may warrant heightened review, maybe looking at, complaints from customers or communities, looking at UCLA speed tests, those kinds of things would trigger that. So they are taking that into account. So again, that's I've linked to this in the description of this video. And again, this is all what's determining what is on the FCC broadband map. So you can look here. I just picked a central spot in Atlanta, and you can see here the data as of June 30th, 2023. That's kind of the key thing in that this is the most recent round of data. Prior to this new map coming out, this would have said December 31st, 2022. So this is the date that changed here. Now you also see updated 11/14, 2023, and you will see this change more often, I believe, because I think every couple of weeks they're making maybe updates to this on various kinds of smaller challenges, those kinds of things. But this is the data. The 6-month data is what is reflected by the internet service providers uploading their serviceable locations, the areas that they serve. So that is the main date there that we're looking at. So good news, new map, and again, it's getting better and better each time. Again, it was already determined how much money each state was going to get, but this will help them further as they try to compare what locations are unserved or underserved in their state. They can look at this map and have a little bit fresher data from the FCC on that. But they're still going to have their own maps and their own methodology, hopefully, to be looking at what they have, what they show as the reality on the ground, and what the FCC is showing based on their information. So, but it obviously can help the states, and it helps others that want to be looking and seeing what the state of broadband is as this gets more accurate. So thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed to our channel, click the subscribe button, ring the bell to be notified when I'm live. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it. See you next time. Bye-bye.